In a magazine Lucifer, which Madame Blavatsky edited for the first time in 1887, we find in the September edition of 1891 a poem by Madame Blavatsky, which has been my favorite for many years, where she says, "There is a road, steep and thorny, beset with perils of every kind, but yet a road, and it leads to the heart of the universe. I can tell you how to find those who will show you the secret gateway that leads inward only, and closes fast behind the neophyte forevermore. There is no danger that dauntless courage cannot conquer. There is no trial that spotless purity cannot pass through. There is no difficulty that strong intellect cannot surmount. For those who win onward, there is reward past telling, the power to bless and save humanity. For those who fail, there will be other lives in which success may come. If there is a road to the heart of the great universe, which occultism calls macrocosm, and man is its reflection, or microcosm, then there must be within ourselves the road as well, which the voice of the silence emphasizes too. There is but one road to the path of truth, and at the very end, the voice of the silence can be heard." How is it possible to find that road, as well as those who can show us the secret gateway, when there are so many seemingly different sideways? In Isis Unveiled, we can read, "As the white ray of light is decomposed by the prism into the various colors of the solar spectrum, so the beam of divine truth, in passing through the three-sided prism of man's nature, has been broken up into vari-colored fragments called religions." And Robert Crosby, the founder of the United Lodge of Theosophists, brought this very well and simple to the point in his book, The Friendly Philosopher, where he says, "Generally speaking, a ray comes from a light. The ray is not the light itself, but a projection of it. And yet it is the light, because without the light there would be no ray. The color of the light is clear and uniform. The ray is changed in color by the substances through which it passes. When the ray is indrawn, it is of the same color as the light, and is the light. In fact, was the light all the time, for the appearance of the different colors was from that through which it passes." The cover of their book, The Quantum Universe, Everything That Happens Does Happen, by Brian Cox and Jeff Forshaw, both physics professors at Manchester University, shows the colors of the rainbow, and it says that particles of light from the sun approach a cloud of water droplets in the sky. Some pass through, while some enter the drops and reflect and refract back. Quantum theory, which deals with the mathematical description of the motion and interaction of subatomic particles, let us calculate precisely the probability that a photon, or particle of light, will reach our eye and join with myriads of others to create a rainbow on our retina, but only by allowing each and every one to explore the entire universe on their journey through the rain. An example of what that means when talking about philosophy is given by the Mahatma Kutumi in the Mahatma Letters, taking Hermetic philosophy as an example. Hermetic philosophy suits every creed and philosophy and clashes with none, he says. It is the boundless ocean of truth, the central point whither flows and wherein meet every river as every stream, whether the source is be east, west, north, or south. As the course of the river depends upon the nature of its basin, So the channel for communication of knowledge must conform itself to surrounding circumstances. The Egyptian Hierophant, the Chaldean Magi, the Arhat, and the Rishi were bound in days of yore on the same voyage of discovery, and ultimately arrived at the same goal, though by different tracks. There are even at the present moment 3 centers of the occult brotherhood in existence, widely separated geographically and as widely exoterically. The true esoteric doctrine being identical in substance, though differing in terms, all aiming at the same grand object, but no two agreeing seemingly in the details of procedure. It is an everyday occurrence to find students belonging to different schools of occult science sitting side by side at the feet of the same guru. Upasika, Madame Blavatsky, and Zubarrow, a theosophist at her time, though pupils of the same master, Moria, have not followed the same philosophy. The one is Buddhist, that was Madame Blavatsky, and Zubarrow was an Advaiti. Thus it is plain that the methods of occultism, though in the main unchangeable, have yet to conform to altered times and circumstances. The state of the general society in England in comparison to India, for example, requires quite a different policy in presenting the occult sciences. The only object to be striven for is the amelioration or betterment of the condition of man, by the spread of truth suited to the various stages of his development and that of the country he inhabits and belongs to. Truth has no earmarks and does not suffer from the name under which it is promulgated if the said object is attained. All true students of mysticism, says HPB, have good reason to believe, even when they do not absolutely know, that the various schools of occultism considered from the highest or most spiritual and abstract teaching lead to the same goal. They may be called by different names, and their methods in minor details may not be the same, but the wisdom au fond is identical. And Isis Unveiled gives another example, where we can read, "There never was nor ever will be a truly philosophical mind, whether pagan, heathen, Jew, or Christian, but has followed the same path of thought. Gautama Buddha is mirrored in the precepts of Christ. Paul and Philo-Judaeus are faithful echoes of Plato. And Ammonius Saccas and Plotinus won their immortal fame by combining the teachings of all these great masters of true philosophy. Prove all things, hold fast that which is good, ought to be the motto of all brothers on earth." The ascending path back to our source is not an easy one. 3 preconditions are already pointed out by Madame Blavatsky in the poem which we read at the beginning. Dauntless courage, spotless purity, strong intellect. If you have not come across the Master's specified outlines yet of what that means, and we can find these teachings scattered all over Madame Blavatsky's collected writings and the Mahatma letters, you might be in for a bit of a shock, but it cannot be helped. The preconditions are too often overlooked and neglected, or even ignored, because they need our total dedication and a fundamental change of our lifestyle. Without this change, we will make no advancement with the practical occult sciences, said the Mahatma Moria, as you will find out a little later on. And Buddha is supposed to have said that change is never painful. Only resistance to change is painful. Occultism is not to be trifled with, says the Mahatma Kutumi. It demands all or nothing. What follows now is a rough outline from those who can show us this secret gateway that leads inward only, because they have mastered that thorny road already, and they speak from their own experience. The Mahatma Kutumi tells us that new ideas have to be planted on clean places, for these ideas touch upon the most momentous subject. It is not physical phenomena, but these universal ideas that we study. As to comprehend the former, physical phenomena, we have to first understand the latter, universal ideas. They touch man's true position in the universe in relation to his previous and future birth, his origin and ultimate destiny, the relation of the mortal to the immortal, of the temporary to the eternal, of the finite to the infinite. Ideas larger, grander, more comprehensive, recognizing the universal reign of immutable law, unchanging and unchangeable, in regard to which there is only an eternal now. While to uninitiated mortals, time is past or future is related to their finite existence on this material speck of dirt. This is what we study, and what many have solved. The chiefs want a brotherhood of humanity, a real universal fraternity started, an institution which would make itself known throughout the world and arrest the attention of the highest minds. You were already told, said the Master, that the path to occult sciences has to be trodden laboriously and crossed at the danger of life, that every new step in it leading to the final goal is surrounded by pitfalls and cruel thorns, that the pilgrim who ventures upon it is made first to confront and conquer the 1,001 furies who keep watch over its adamantine gates and entrance, furies called doubt, skepticism, scorn, ridicule, envy, and finally temptation, especially the latter. And that he who would see beyond had to first destroy this living wall, that he must be possessed of a heart and soul clad in steel and of an iron, never failing determination, and yet be meek and gentle, humble, and have shut out from his heart every human passion that leads to evil. Are you all this? Have you ever begun a course of training which would lead to it? Asked the Master. We would, of course, be very mistaken to believe that the path to enlightenment and chelarship is without preconditions. To face the furies described above need careful preparations to strengthen our whole constitution. Occult science is a jealous mistress, says Mahatma Kutumi, and allows not a shadow of self-indulgence. And now we come back to the even stronger and very blunt words by the Mahatma Maurya, which I mentioned before. They are unequivocal and uncompromising, taken from a letter to Madame Blavatsky concerning our attitude to theosophy or the wisdom of the gods, and what has to change fundamentally if we want to progress on the path to enlightenment. Under the Master's watchful eyes and blunt words, we will become aware of what shortcomings are still lingering in our constitution. And then it will be up to us if we take a defiant attitude or do our best to get rid of them on our chosen path. We can only do what we are able to, because HBB said in the poem which I read at the beginning, for those who fail, there will be other lives in which success may come. So it is absolutely in our hand how fast we want to move and live accordingly. When taking a chela into his energy field or aura, a master is making a great sacrifice by constantly counteracting imbalances in the chela's energy field. He will only take these risks if the chela's vibrations are as clean and harmonious as possible. The masters don't waste energy unnecessarily. And here's what the Master Maurya wants us to become especially aware of and sort out. It is just about half of the letter, which has even stronger words further on. But he begins by, observe that the first of the steps of gold which mount towards the temple of truth is a clean life. This means a purity of body and a still greater purity of mind, heart, and spirit. How many of them, us of course, violate one or more of these conditions of the right path and yet expect to be freely taught the highest wisdom and sciences, the wisdom of the gods? As pure water poured into a scavenger's bucket is befouled and unfit for use, so is divine truth when poured into the consciousness of a sensualist. Pointed out especially is gluttony, eating and drinking for the sensual pleasures they give. There's a very, very ancient maxim, he says, far older than the time of the Romans or the Greeks, more ancient than the Egyptians and Chaldeans. It is a maxim all of them, theosophists, ought to remember and live accordingly. And it is that a sound and pure mind requires a sound and pure body. Bodily purity every adept takes precaution to keep. Believe the teacher from whose letter I quote, if you will not believe me, says Madame Blavatsky, that though such a person with any of the faults as above declared should fill the world with its charities and make his name known throughout every nation, he would make no advancement in the practical occult sciences, but be continually slipping backwards. The 6 and 10 transcendental virtues, the paramitas, are not for full-grown yogis and priests alone, but for all those who would enter the path. And the 10 perfections are generosity, moral conduct, wisdom, energy, patience, truthfulness, determination, loving-kindness, and equanimity. And in addition, here are just the 3 rules out of 12 from practical occultism. No animal food of whatever kind. Nothing that has life in it should be taken by a disciple. No wine, no spirits or opium should be used. For these are like the lammer, evil spirits who fasten upon the unwary. They devour the understanding. Meditation, abstinence in all, the observation of moral duties, gentle thoughts, good deeds and kind words, as goodwill to all and entire oblivion of self are the most efficacious means of obtaining knowledge and preparing for the reception of higher wisdom. It is only by virtue of a strict observance of the foregoing rules that a Lanu can hope to acquire in good time the siddhis, or phenomenal powers acquired through holiness, of the arhats, or worthy ones, the growth which makes him become gradually one with the universal all. Even these few rules are enough to show the immensity of the difficulties which beset the path of the would-be chela or disciple, who has been born and bred in Western lands, says HPB. Why are these rules so strict? It has all to do with sound and vibration, as we will find out now. Although ethical considerations are of the greatest importance when we decide to enter the path of true theosophy or enlightenment, that is just half of the picture. Connected to it are very technical implications that depend on them. As we have heard before, the secret doctrine is the accumulated wisdom of the ages, and that the mysterious power of occult symbolism, which has actually occupied countless generations of initiated seers, are all recorded on a few pages of geometrical signs and glyphs. How did they do it? By checking, testing, and verifying in every department of nature the traditions of old by the independent visions of great adepts. That is, men who have developed and perfected their physical, mental, psychic, and spiritual organization to the utmost possible degree. No vision of an adept was accepted till it was checked and confirmed by the visions, so obtained as to stand as independent evidence of other adepts and by centuries of experience. With other words, without perfecting our whole constitution, including the body, no clear reflection is possible, and we would take distortions as realities. Isaac Newton once said, "If I have seen further than others, it is by standing upon the shoulders of giants." Dr. William A. Alcott, an American educational reformer and physician, wrote in a book in 1869, which is called Vegetable Diet, as sanctions by medical men and by experience in all ages. About Newton, he wrote, "This distinguished philosopher and mathematician is said to have abstained rigorously at times from all but purely vegetable food and from all drinks but water. And it is also stated that some of his important labors were performed at these seasons of strict temperance. While writing his treatise on optics, it is said he confined himself entirely to bread, with a little sack of water. And I have no doubt that his remarkable equanimity of temper and that government of his animal appetites, for which he was so distinguished to the last hour of his life, were owing in no small degree to his habits of rigid temperance." So what have the perfected giants of mankind on whose shoulders Newton claimed to be standing when seeing a little further found out and would like to share with us? I think a short recap of some aspects of cosmology according to Gupta Vidya, or the esoteric sciences as taught by the adepts, will help us to identify the goal of physical existence, which everybody in the end will have to aim for. When finally seeing through the illusion and impermanence of the world around us, trying to emancipate from it, and by purifying our whole constitution, including the body, for this adventure is of paramount importance. The secret doctrine says, in occult metaphysics, there are properly speaking two ones. The one on the unreachable plane of absoluteness and infinity, called Parabrahm in Hindu philosophy, on which no speculation is possible. And the second one, on the plane of emanation. The second being, so to speak, the reflection of the first one, for it is a logos, or Ishvara in the universe of illusion. And that it is motion which begets the logos, the word in occultism. And the Mahatma Kutumi confirms that the universal perpetual motion, which never ceases, never slackens, nor increases its speed, not even during the interludes between the pralayas or nights of Brahma, is the only eternal and uncreated deity we are able to recognize. The Greek term logos was with every nation and people the manifested deity, or the effect of a cause, which is ever concealed. Thus speech is the logos of thought, and translated by verbum or word in its metaphysical sense. It also symbolizes reason etymologically. In her booklet, Reflections on Time, Duration and Immortality, Yancey Hoskins, who was national president when I joined the TS in 1991, refers to the Gospel according to St. John, which opens with the familiar words, "In the beginning was the Word," or logos in the Greek text. But she adds that she had come across a new English Bible, which starts with a significant difference, where it says, "When all things began, the Word already was," which means that nothing has started from nothing, but everything is always there in its potentiality. And the secret doctrine confirms the absolute law of periodicity, like flux and reflux, ebb and flow, activity and rest, life and death, which physical science has observed in all departments of nature. The stanzas given in the secret doctrine treat only of the cosmogony of our own planetary system and what is visible around it after a solar pralaya or rest, says HBB. The secret teachings with regard to the evolution of the universal cosmos cannot be given, since they could not be understood by the highest minds in this age. And there seem to be very few initiates, even among the greatest, who are allowed to speculate on this subject. Moreover, the teachers say openly that not even the highest Dhyani Chohans or highest intelligences have ever penetrated the mysteries beyond those boundaries that separate the milliards of solar systems from the central sun, as it is called. Therefore, that which is given relates only to our visible cosmos after the night of Brahma. In Hindu cosmogony, Parabrahm, the rootless root of all, is not even mentioned, says HBB in her commentaries. Only Mula Prakriti or its lining. Mula Prakriti is the root nature or soul of the one spirit, from which Akasha radiates. Akasha can be defined in a few words, says HBB. It is a universal soul, the matrix of the universe, the mysterium magnum from which all that exists is born by separation and differentiation. It is the cause of all existence. It fills all the infinite space, is space itself in one sense, or both its sixth and seventh principle. In it lies inherent the eternal ideation of the universe in its ever-changing aspects on the plane of matter and objectivity. It is called Svabhavat in Buddhist philosophy, the source of all life, visible and invisible, an essence inexhaustible and ever-present, the noumenal and abstract aspect of matter, says the Mahatma Kutumi. Svabhavat is the plastic essence that fills the universe, the concrete aspect of the abstraction called Mula Prakriti, says the secret doctrine. It becomes Forhat when manifesting throughout our phenomenal world, or rather visible universe, hence in its limitation. Forhat is a generic term and used in many senses, says HBB. He is the light or Devi Prakriti of the three logoi, the personified symbols of the three spiritual stages of evolution. Forhat is the aggregate of all the spiritual creative ideations above and of all the electrodynamic and creative forces below, in heaven and on earth. In the secret doctrine, it is almost revealed that the sons of Forhat are the personified forces, known in a general sense as motion, sound, heat, light, cohesion, electricity or electric fluid, and nerve force or magnetism. Michio Kaku, professor of physics at City University in New York, writes in his book Parallel Worlds, scientists believe the universe started out in a state of perfection, with all the forces unified into a single force. However, as the universe began to expand and cool rapidly, the original superforce began to crack, with different forces breaking off one after the other. Forhat, what HBB was talking about. Evolution is commenced by the intellectual energy of the Logos, not merely on account of the potentialities locked up in Mula Prakriti. The light of the Logos is a link between objective matter and subjective thought. It is Forhat, the one instrument with which the Logos works. It is interesting that science calls a photon of light also a messenger particle. There seems to be great confusion and misunderstanding concerning the first and second Logos, says HBB. The first is the already present, yet still unmanifested potentiality in the bosom of Father-Mother, or the root of nature. The second is the abstract collectivity of creators, called in Greek demiurgi, or the builders of the universe. The third Logos is the ultimate differentiation of the second and the individualization of cosmic forces, of which Forhat is the chief. For Fouad is the synthesis of the 7 creative rays or dianchuans which proceed from the third logos. By virtue of an eternal, uncreated and changeless law, everything in manifested nature unfolds on a 7-fold principle, which causes the great periods of activity and rest, or what Hindu philosophy calls the days and nights of Brahma. This real 7-fold classification is of great theoretical and scientific importance, says HPB. It will be necessary to adapt it to explain certain classes of phenomena noticed by occultists. It bridges the gulf between the objective and subjective and indicates the mysterious circuit through which ideation passes. The 7 principles are allied to 7 states of matter and to 7 forms of force. These principles are harmoniously arranged between 2 poles, which define the limits of human consciousness. This reminds us already of the 2 ends or poles of the strings of a musical instrument, like a violin, a guitar, or a harp. Their vibration produces sounds, and the 2 poles of the keyboard of the universe, or akasha, produce the music of the spheres. At the time of cosmic activity, there starts a center of spiritual and conscious energy from Parabrahm. This center of spiritual energy is unborn and eternal, acting through the Logos. The expansion of the universal matrix is not an expansion of a small center of focus, but a development of limitless subjectivity into limitless objectivity, not being an increase in size, but a change of condition, originating from the last vibration of the 7th eternity, or last period of activity that thrills through infinitude when a new Anvantara or active period is about to begin. And this last vibration announcing a new dawn is synonymous with the first unmanifested Logos at the time of the primordial radiation, or the first light that appears. Frank Close, professor of physics at Oxford University, says something similar in the foreword to his book Antimatter, referring to Genesis, that darkness was on the face of the void. Then came a burst of energy, let there be light, and there was light. From where it came, I don't know, he says. What we do know now is that this energy coagulated into matter and its mysterious opposite antimatter in perfect counterbalance. Today, antimatter does not exist normally, at least on Earth, a vanishing act that is one of the unexplained mysteries of the universe, he says. There's neither space nor time when the first Logos appears, says HPB in her commentaries to the Secret Doctrine. Duration is always, it is eternal, but it is outside of space and time. Once it is differentiated, it is all in space and time. Space as an abstraction is endless, but in its concreteness and limitation, space becomes a representation of something. It is what the ancients called deity. In the poem of the Secret Doctrine, we can read that space is neither a limitless void or vacuum, nor a conditioned fullness, but both. On the plane of absolute abstraction, it is the ever-incognizable deity, which is void only to finite minds. And on that plane of Mayavik perception, it is a plenum or absolute container of all that is, whether manifested or unmanifested. Therefore, that absolute all. Science has found out as well that space contains different levels of aggregation. In his book, A Beautiful Question, Finding Nature's Deep Design, Frank Wilczek, Nobel Prize laureate and professor of physics at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, writes, the word vacuum is commonly understood to mean empty space, devoid of matter. That all depends on how hard we are looking. But the vacuum of interstellar space is permeated by a variety of quantum energy fields. that the word vacuum does not refer unambiguously to a definite thing, and that the philosophical concept of void or space as perfect nothingness is quite different from any reasonable understanding of physical space in the present-day physical world. In modern physical cosmology, it is important to take into account that space-filling fields, such as the electromagnetic field, for example, or the newly discovered Higgs field, have profound physical effects, he says, altering the behavior of matter and contributing to dark energy. They are pervasive and inescapable. The behavior of matter within these different vacuums can be drastically different. It is suggestive that space itself is a sort of material that can exist in different phases, just as water can exist as liquid water, ice, or steam. If such diverse regions of space exist, then the universe as we have defined it is not the whole reality. We call the whole of reality the multiverse, he says. And now we come to the importance of sound and vibration. The ancient wisdom tradition teaches us further that, quoting from Hermes, that creative speech, or verbum, is the seminal principle scattered throughout the universe. The divine resonance is only the outbreathing of the first sound of Aum, the power which stirs up and animates the particles of the universe. The vibration sweeps along, touching with its swift wings simultaneously the whole universe and the germ that dwells in darkness, the darkness that breathes, moves over the slumbering waters of life. If creative sound, the verbum or logos, is the seminal principle throughout the universe, what does that mean for us practically? In the Anugita it is said, where do I have the Anugita? Oh, yeah. In the Anugita it is said that Akasha has one quality, and that is sound. That the seven principles of the Hindu Gamut are corresponding to the elements and the senses, and that it is only by the emancipation of the self, by overcoming the illusion of the material or objective plane, that the secret wisdom of the qualities of objects and their dual plane of manifestation, the visible and the invisible, can be achieved. Like every other orb of space, our Earth has, before obtaining its ultimate materiality, to pass through a gamut of 7 stages of density, says the Mahatma Kutumi. I say gamut advisably, since the diatonic scale best affords an illustration of the perpetual rhythmic motion of the descending and ascending cycle of Svabhavat, graduated as it is by tones and semitones. Moreover, man was regarded in several systems as the third logos. The secret meaning of the word logos, speech or word or verbum, is the rendering in objective expression, as in a photograph, of the concealed thought. The logos is a mirror reflecting divine mind. And the universe is a mirror of the logos, though the latter is the esse or essence of the universe. As the logos reflects all in the universe of Pleroma, so man reflects in himself all that he sees and finds in his universe, the earth. If we look into a dictionary, we can read that speech is the expression of, or the ability to express thoughts and feelings by articulate sounds. Since the word logos means speech or word, this would mean that from the randomness of the Akashic sounds, the intellectual energy behind logos or verbum can organize or render, like in a mirror, the concealed vibration of thought into objectivity by organizing the vibrations of sound. Here we have the first indication why the spotless purity of a receiver is of paramount importance to avoid distortions. All possible worlds coexist with us, writes Professor Michio Kaku, whom I've mentioned before. But our wave function has decohered with other worlds. The waves are no longer in phase with each other. This means that the slightest contamination with the environment will prevent the various functions from interacting with each other. Now we get an idea what that means for man if we are to reflect the universe within us. In physics, sound is a vibration that propagates as an audible mechanical wave of pressure through a medium, such as air or water, which is perceived by the brain. How sound can produce physical phenomena is shown in cymatics, which is a Greek term for waves. Here we see a vibrating plate at a specific frequency characteristic for that vibration and the pattern it produces. Professor Michio Kaku further tells us that the heart of an electron, for example, is not a point particle, but an extremely tiny string. If we were to pluck this string, the vibration would change. The electron might turn into a neutrino or a quark. It could turn into any of the subatomic particles we know, because they are but different nodes on a superstring and not fundamental. Only the string is. The universe can now be seen as a vast symphony of strings. As every atom in every object of nature, animate or inanimate, sings its own keynote and produces its own sound and has its own color and number, also Madame Blavatsky confirms that. So every man, flower, tree, and every celestial body is a play and interplay of sounds, both loud and faint, interblending in a marvelous symphony, as well as being a beautiful intermingling of flashing and scintillating color. For instance, the auric egg of a man is not only a mass of coruscating colors, but equally is a living organ producing harmonies of sound when the emotions, thought, and feelings are on a high plane, and horrible discord when they are characterized by hatred and other low passions. As a string vibrates and gives an audible note, so the nerves of the human body vibrate and thrill in correspondence with various emotions under the general impulse of the circulating vitality of prana, thus producing undulations in the psychic aura of the person, which results in chromatic effects. The human nervous system as a whole may be regarded as an Aeolian harp, says HBB, responding to the impact of the vital force, which is no abstraction but a dynamic reality, and manifests the subtlest shades of the individual character in color phenomena. If these nerve vibrations are made intense enough and brought into a vibratory relation with the astral element, the result is sound. How then can anybody doubt the relation between the microcosmic and macrocosmic forces? The late Dr. Valerie Hunt, former professor of physiological sciences at the University of California in Los Angeles, had studied the human aura for decades with a biofield monitor, which he had developed with a NASA engineer. This biofield monitor showed microvoltage small amplitude energy, unique to each individual, changing with emotions and consciousness, that it interacts and transacts with other quantum fields of information, and it is selective. That the auric vibration in microvolts had the same frequency as the human ear. When amplified, these vibrations become sounds, which can be heard and become our personal symphony, just what HBB has said before. She describes a very interesting incident of what a crippling effect alcohol, for example, has on our aura or our bioelectromagnetic energy field. When a television crew from a national broadcasting station visited a laboratory for shooting a documentary, 9 technicians appeared with an array of equipment, and of course with their own individual energy fields or aura. An odor of alcohol was noticeable in their breath, They had apparently been entertained at a party the night before. The scientists were prepared to instrument the test person's energy field for direct online filming of the oscilloscope and computer displays. But to their amazement, a glitch occurred in the equipment. No signal could be obtained. It was at first thought that the technical equipment of the TV crew had overloaded their own instruments. But strangely enough, the TV equipment was not the problem. Because when the TV crew was asked to leave the room, although leaving their equipment behind, normal energy recordings were possible again within a few minutes. The problem were not incompatible instruments, but rather incompatible energy fields, a sensitive subject which was about to be monitored, and a contaminated crew, or even a field reaction from sensitive staff which make direct recordings impossible. The problem could only be circumvented by using already recorded data during the documentation. The ancients were very much aware about the influence of sound in and on our auric field and the body. Indian classical compositions, for example, are based on raga, which means to color. It is an acoustic method of influencing or coloring the mind of the listener with an emotion. It is not a tune or melody, but a combination of different characteristics. There's a collection of fundamental notes of the raga and the vibration of their pitch moving up and down the musical scale at certain vibrations have a distinct influence on our nervous system, just what HBB said long before. The musical expression by mixing sounds is as endless as mixing colors for a painting. Even if the theme of a painting might look the same, the choice of colors gives them an underlying quality which makes them distinct from each other. Although the Indian musical system is also based on the diatonic or sevenfold musical scale with its sub and semitones, as mentioned by the Mahatma Kutumi before, it is quite a bit different from the chromatic or 12-tone system of the musical scale which we use in the West. In the Secret Doctrine we can read that the Vedas, for example, have a distinct dual meaning. One expressed by the literal sense of the word, the other indicated by the meter or swara, which is intonation, which are the life of the Vedas, and that the mysterious connection between light and swara is one of the most profound secrets. Swara is closely connected with shruti, or revealed knowledge. In Indian music, it is also the interval between musical notes which make us grasp the theme of the sounds we hear or the melody. Brian Godden, a professional musician who has studied both Indian and Western musical systems, says in his article, The Perfect Third Discovery, as distinct from our Western chromatic scale of 12 notes, there are 22 shrutis in Indian music, which can be discerned by the musical ear by thoroughly training dormant pathways within the brain, and that they resonate sympathetically in the DNA of our body cells. As we have heard before, the DNA of our body is a self-replicating material in living organisms and the main constituent of chromosomes carrying genetic information in form of genes. It is interesting to know that humans have 46 chromosomes in each cell. 2 of them are the male and female sex chromosomes. The other 42 of them are pairs of 22 autosomes. One set of autosomes is from our mother, the other from our father. They are combined into pairs and numbered by size, and it is said that these strings resonate with all things vibratory. It is probably no coincidence that the shrutis are also 22 in number, resonating sympathetically in the DNA within the cells of our bodies when listening to sound or music. Like the different solfeggio frequency in ancient 6-tone musical scale used in sacred music, like the Gregorian chants, are said to help balancing the energy of body, mind, and spirit. From all this information, it is obvious why our whole constitution, including the body, must be devoid of pollution leading to distortions if we want to become receptive of the higher vibrations of love for all life and the wisdom about the evolutionary path of all forms of existence, and with it true brotherhood. In other words, to resonate with the Logos. The student must purify his whole nature, moral, mental, and physical. If the upadhi or vehicle is not perfectly pure, it cannot preserve recollections coming from a higher state. Therefore, it is above all things of importance that the thoughts should be kept pure. You must purify the lower quaternary, that it shall vibrate in unison with the upper triad. Rule 5 of practical occultism says, the co-disciples must be tuned by the guru as the strings of a lute or veena, each different from the others, yet each emitting sounds in harmony with all. Collectively, they must form a keyboard, answering in all its parts to thy slightest touch, the touch of the Master. Thus their minds shall open for the harmonies of wisdom, to vibrate as knowledge through each and all. So shall wisdom be impressed forever on their hearts, and the harmony of the law shall never be broken. The famous German poet Friedrich von Schiller, who wrote the Ode to Joy, which was adapted by Ludwig van Beethoven for his 9th choral symphony, put the goal in one of his songs at the end of our human evolution into these remarkable words. No one should equal another, but everyone should equal the Most High. How can that be done? Everyone should become perfected within himself. And in her article Genius, Madame Blavatsky says, physical man is a musical instrument, and the ego, a performing artist. The potentiality of perfect melody of sound is in the former, the instrument. And no skill of the latter can awaken a faultless harmony out of a broken or badly made instrument. This harmony depends on the fidelity of transmission by word or act to the objective plane of the unspoken divine thought in the very depths of man's subjective inner nature. Physical man may, to follow our simile, be a priceless Stradivarius, or a cheap and cracked fiddle, or again a mediocrity between the two in the hands of the Paganini who ensouls him. Peace be with you.